Hello folks, this is an update on mapping out your project, yes? How to take your paper cutting and place the inversion in the proper places. I'm using a light table, but tracing your work onto your Bristol paper is a great idea. It creates a map for you to follow, yeah? So these places are just placeholders, everything's loose here, placing it as I go. I have the majority of this cut out. You want to start by cutting out your largest shapes first, and then working towards your smaller shapes. I was working in this area definitely much later. I started off with the large hand with my largest shapes, the outline of that hand, and then I worked into the smaller details. Yeah. So I'm going to take you over to my cutting area. So you need to kind of have an area where you are placing out your work, you're mapping it out, you've put it on your Bristol paper. This Bristol paper, again, if you notice, has a 1/2 inch border on those edges, right? Another 1/2 inch border on this side. I've marked it out 8 by 8. I've even indicated my halfway points and my halfway points within my composition too, usually. There it is, yeah? So halfway point markers are indicated. It's mapped out. My axis line is clearly defined on my Bristol paper. And if you do not have a light table, you're probably going to want to trace an outline of your map on that other side as well, especially where your pieces are going to be majority floating. All right, so I wanted to do some brief cutting demos and to talk about, how to remove pieces from your paper without creating tears. Yeah, avoiding tears and blemishes and mistakes is a huge part of this project going smoothly. Having a practice piece of paper to practice your cutting skills with first before you work on your image is really important. So I taught you how to transfer with graphite. Unfortunately, graphite does move around a bit. You might have a hard time finding the line as you go. You might have a hard time seeing that line on the video. I was having a hard time seeing it myself. So looking at how you can create more contrast, I found a white colored pencil, started to go over all my lines with that so that I just had higher contrast, okay? This is something that you might not find necessary, but I found, like with my eyes, I really needed it. So if you see kind of a whiter line, that's what I ended up doing, is going around my image with a little bit of a more white line. Cutting. I want to cut. I'm going to show you a way to handle corners. Any change in direction of your line, the change of direction of your cutting tool is an opportunity for a paper tag, right? For it to get stuck. So also it's an opportunity for you to be efficient with your range of motion. Range of motion is really important with using an X-Acto knife as your medium, as your cutting tool. And those two lines I noticed were running semi-parallel to each other, so I did them together at the same time before rotating my paper so that then I can use again my natural range of motion to cut the other sections that ran in the opposite direction. Now, I could tell that that paper was free because it lifted right as I met with the last bridge, right? Saving that piece. In this one, though, I have a feeling that as I complete my shape, it's not going to want to come out right away. I'm going to have a little bit of a tear, a little bit of a hold, and that way I can demo how to free up your paper without tearing it out. In this project, you don't really have the freedom or the opportunity to be like, oh, I missed that line, I'm going to just come back in and recut it. Now you've created a gap and a piece that's missing, right? We want to use every piece. So your line that you're cutting is a one-time opportunity. So it creates focus, it creates intention, and yeah, possibly some stress. I'm going to get to where it changes direction and then I'm going to stop. I'm going to rotate and I'm going to come to that edge and give it a quick turn. And again, a quick turn. I'm going to rotate the paper and keep the tip of my blade anchored in my surface. And there we go. Now I made that corner a little tighter. Okay, I've gone here. I have this remaining section to cut. So I'm going to come around, and again, this is a very tight corner, so I'm going to anchor my blade, make a tight curve. Ooh, bummer. Shoot, I just broke the tip of my blade off. Dang it. I hate that. There it is, sticking in my curses. That's the worst. Yep. Tip of my blade is sticking out of my of my nonstick. Time for bigger guns. I'm gonna dig that out. That's a major bummer. Ooh, I need to go get my tweezers. Oops, I got it. I'm going to put that in my work tray so it doesn't land in my carpet. But that's a bummer, because now I know that the tip of my X-Acto knife is definitely not going to give me the same detail that it had been. So I'll probably be changing this soon before I go into more of my work. A little too much pressure there. Okay, so I can still see that I have a whole length to go. Duh. Let me get that. Okay, now this will lift. Yes. So now this will lift without a tear, and you don't ever want to have to pull your pieces off, okay? If you start to pull, that means you need to go back to a point of direction and just push straight down, and usually that will pull free, okay? All right, so that's just a demo practice on scratch paper before you pull out your work, yes? So I have this lace work for my scales and justice. I've already removed, the star, the steps, the House of Congress, I believe, or the Supreme Court. And then I have this last little bit of my justice scales and dollar sign to go through before I get out. Just one last piece of detail to cut and share with you. And then I'll do a separate last one for gluing, okay? So making sure that once your work is to this point where it's almost just a lace work of paper, you have to create anchor points so that you're maintaining pressure downwards so the paper doesn't just tear with you as you are trying to remove portions. So you're kind of always making sure that your non-dominant hand is out of the way and that it is your anchor, and that again you're following the right lines. So it's always a good idea to keep your drawing near, yes, so that you can reference and be like, oh yes, this is what I wanted to do. I'm removing this here and there. So, almost done. Quite sure that this is my point of connection still that needs to come apart. Okay, let's see where we're at. So when I come to lift it, yeah, I'm seeing that there's still quite a bit I need to cut here, here, and here, and then this small section should come free. Yeah. Okay, so across the top of the dollar sign. Good. And you'll notice that having tiny curves in small places is really challenging. The more straight lines that you use, the easier your design is a little bit to execute, but curves are important. We need those in our shapes. So be sure that as you are designing and cutting, you take those time for the curves if you have them, because you will need a different sort of patience for that. There we go. Okay, one last cut across the bottom here. There we are. Okay, this is looking like it still is going to get stuck in one of these corners. Right here. There we go. Great. So now I have removed this side of the dollar sign. There's this last little triangle here, and then these two small pieces, and then this whole portion is complete. Then my last section that I have to do, that I've saved, is the most detail. Yeah? I saved... So this is the last section that I'll be cutting out. I'll probably be starting up in this area, working with my bigger shapes, and then I'll be working down here into my details, into the church, the factory, the smoke, right? So that this last piece of negative space will be the last piece that I place over on my map. Okay? All right, I'm close to being done here. But again, I started with my largest shapes. I removed those large shapes first, then I worked into the smaller ones and removed that whole section, yeah, so that I could work on them in independent little sections. Okay. All right, folks. I will pause and then we will start again when it's time for gluing.